I was ready to do whatever necessary and whatever it took to be with Ingrid for the rest of my life. But there's something in my gut that's telling me that she's not here for the right reasons.
Oh, the irony. Brian, mate, hold the mirror up to yourself. You're the one who's not there for the right reasons. Brian doesn't want a partner. He wants a hot girlfriend who'll also double up as his caretaker. But the way he's playing the blame game, he's always pointing fingers and he's always the victim, is getting too much for anyone to take.
Yeah. Achando cara de quê? Me respeita.
This sort of blow-up is long overdue. But before we get into that, let's rewind to the start. So the last we saw the pair was the dinner from hell. Brian casually revealed that he'd been lying about how many marriages and engagements he'd had. He tried making out like Ingrid was judging him, and when we joined Ingrid the next morning, understandably, she's feeling apprehensive about everything. This is all getting too much, she says. All of his lies, all of the skeletons in his closet.
Quero que dá certo, eu torço pra isso. Toda vez que a gente tá perto de ter, aproxima a gente mais. Brian vem com a bomba e joga tudo em cima e eu não tenho ideia do que esperar.
Now, remember, up until last night, Ingrid was still under the impression that Brian only had 2 ex-wives, when in actual fact, he has 4. Well, actually technically 3. He still hasn't divorced one of them. Yeah, he's still married, and that also doesn't take into account the 3 other additional engagements that he's had. Not to be funny, but learning that would come as a shock to anyone. So it's no real surprise that Ingrid needs her space. She needs to digest that information. But the thing is, as far as Brian's concerned, that request is unreasonable.
As far as I'm concerned, we have space. She's not even staying in the same apartment as me. So really, I'm confused with that. I don't know what space means anymore.
It means leave her alone, Brian. Stop pestering her. The guy's a real creep, a real pest, isn't he? He expects everything on his own terms. And in his mind, tellingly, he really doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He thinks, or he wants us to think, that Ingrid's the suspicious one. She's the one always looking for excuses, he says.
No matter what I say or do, it always just seems that she's looking for another reason or excuse to pull away and create distance.
That just isn't true. Ingrid pulls away when she discovers more of Brian's lies. If he'd stopped hiding the truth, well, she wouldn't act that way. But the thing is, Brian is incapable of viewing his own flaws, right? To him, this must be an Ingrid problem. So who does Brian turn to bitch about Ingrid again? Well, his sister, Reese, and he begins by filling her in on what happened at dinner last night.
Conversation came up, marriage, oh, you're married 4 times, how many times you engaged, how many women have you had? So there was a lot of judging going on there.
Now, the last time Brian turned to Reese, she was great. She put her brother in his place. She told him straight. She made him see that he was the one at fault. But today, it's different. You see, today, Reese doesn't get given the whole story. Brian paints Ingrid out to be this lying, judging nightmare, but crucially, he misses out a vital element of the story. He completely fails to mention the fact that he lied to Ingrid. He never told her the truth in the first place. It's a reoccurring theme with this guy, isn't it? He constantly lies, and when the truth inevitably comes out, he whines about how Ingrid's reaction must mean she doesn't love him.
There's no care, there's no love. Every time I go to kiss, it's like grandma kiss, peck on the mouth. There's nothing there. There's nothing there.
This is no surprise, is it? We all knew it would come back down to sex. He might be talking about kissing, but read between the lines and he's still clearly butthurt that Ingrid keeps rejecting his sexual advances. He can't stomach the fact that she's still not slept with him. She prefers to sleep in an entirely different building to him. But, of course, watch him expertly spin the narrative. Watch him make himself out to be the victim again.
It's not that I need love, right? I'm not needing, but it's that I want somebody special with me, you know, and it's just hard, you know?
Aw, diddums, poor Brian, it's hard, is it? It's not that I need love, he says. I mean, come on. Who's buying this shit? really. I mean, the words coming out of his mouth don't match his actions. I mean, he's literally the most needy guy there is. Like, let's just summarise, okay? Creepy Brian isn't getting sex from his 100th Brazilian girlfriend who he wants to nurse him as he gets older, so he paints her out to be the bad guy who doesn't love the poor man in a wheelchair. That's about the long and short of it, isn't it? It's toxic as and we're not buying it. Now, Reese, not knowing the whole story, tells her brother that he needs to talk to Ingrid. He needs to find out her true feelings about him. And, of course, Brian goes into that meeting with his mind already made up, convinced that Ingrid isn't being genuine. Yeah, you can't make this shit up.
I was ready to do whatever necessary and whatever it took to be with Ingrid for the rest of my life. But there's something in my gut that's telling me that she's not here for the right reasons.
You don't need to be a rocket scientist to realise that this meeting is going to be an absolute disaster. Ingrid's arrived expecting Brian to apologise for his lies, and rightly so, but Brian's shown up ready to accuse Ingrid of being disingenuous. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? He thinks she's the liar because she doesn't sleep with him, when in fact he's the pathological liar. Now, before everything gets out of hand, things proceed. They kick off with Ingrid explaining how she feels.
Tá sendo muito difícil estar processando essas coisas que têm acontecido. Mas eu tô tentando fazer dar certo assim, sabe?
Now, the truth is, Brian isn't actually interested in what Ingrid has to say. He doesn't care about her and her emotions, which is a bit of a pattern, isn't it? He doesn't want anyone with real feelings, anyone who has the ability to be upset when he lies. No, of course not. What he's looking for, what he's clearly been unable to find, is a Barbie doll who'll sit next to him and endlessly dote on him, even when he's the one in the wrong. I just don't get it, he complains. Why are you still not sharing a bed with me, Ingrid?
Você tá no seu hotel e eu tô no meu apartamento e você pede mais espaço ainda e pra mim tá meio it's confusing.
Ingrid is left to explain to this 51-year-old man that taking a minute to yourself, taking time to evaluate after finding out, frankly, some game-changing news, isn't unreasonable. But of course, Brian isn't listening. His mind has already been made up, and the only reason he's even there today seems to be to point fingers.
Mas você nem
Porque
gosta de
cada
mim.
dia.
Você nem
Se eu
gosta
não
de mim.
gostar de você, eu não tava aqui.
As palavras e ações é diferente, né?
Isso mesmo, seu Brian.
Brian may have had a string of relationships, he may have no trouble getting ladies, but scratch the surface and this is a deeply insecure man. In this relationship, right, he's constantly assumed that the reason Ingrid doesn't want to sleep with him is because of his wheelchair. Like, he really believes that that's the reason she doesn't like him. But what he seems incapable of realising is the distance he's constantly complaining about has nothing to do with that. She's distant because of his actions.
Pra mim, eu tô procurando um amor, uma pessoa pra minha vida mesmo, né? Eu quero sentimento, eu quero algo que me ama. E não sinto com você isso.
Yes, Brian, but do you not realise that love is something that you have to work on? Like, he expects Ingrid to be head over heels with him no matter what. But he doesn't understand that before that can happen, if that can ever happen, Ingrid first needs to trust him. Like, perhaps that's why he's had so many failed relationships. He seems to think that love is owed to him.
Aceitou o hotel que eu paguei. Eu sinto mesmo que você não tá sendo... You're not being real with me.
Ingrid can't believe what she's being accused of here. Now, just to be clear, while I clearly don't agree with Brian's line of thought, I don't agree that just because he's paid for the hotel, she somehow owes him something. I do think that it's been clear for a while, Ingrid doesn't like Brian the way that maybe she hoped she would. I think she's conflicted. I think she's worried about how she's going to come across on TV. She doesn't want to be judged for not liking him just because he's in a wheelchair. But in typical Brian fashion, he takes it too far.
Sentindo ainda que você tá me usando para chegar nos Estados Unidos com seus filhos.
Você tá enlouquecendo. tem lógica não.
Mas porque aceitou tudo isso.
No, Brian, that's not fair. It's not fair for two reasons. Firstly, you pitched the getaway as a way for the two of you to bond. It was meant to be a way for you to work on your relationship, something she is committed to. That is, until your lies, yet more lies, came to light. But also, secondly, isn't it ironic that the man who's been dangling the carrot of bringing her over to the States, who literally brought it up to Ingrid's mum, is now trying to flip the script and complain about that? Like, it doesn't work both ways. You can't try and tempt her with a life in the States and then get offended by the fact she wants it. And that might be what she wants. I mean, her friends did hint as much. But regardless, whether or not she is in it for a visa, the truth is, Brian can't try and humiliate her like that. It's not on, it's not fair, and she's not standing for it.
Tá achando eu com cara de quê? Me respeita.
Look, I get it. I completely understand her response. Like him, Brian, that guy, the pathological liar, is trying to paint you out to be the bad guy. Of course you're going to be angry. But there is a silver lining. This is now the perfect opportunity for Ingrid to cut her losses and get the hell out of there. And as for Brian, regardless of his claims, it's not that he needs love, it's not that he's needy. We all know when Ingrid kicks him to the curb, he'll be straight on to his next 30-year-old Brazilian victim in the blink of an eye.